from the skull. Okay. Now skull, you have to know that what are the bones which forms the skull. You have to identify the bone. Say, it's maybe in your theory exam and maybe in your practical that identify this bone, or I'll give you the picture of the skull and I'll ask you to identify this. So first start from the front. The first bone is this is the frontal bone. This is frontal bone. This is single. This is unpaired. Okay, this is unpaired. Then next is these two bones are the parietal bone, and then this is occipital bone, and this region is called as occipital region. Okay, so don't confuse. This is occipital region, this is frontal region, this is parietal region. So this bone is called as occipital, and this bone is temporal bone. So here you see that these two bones are paired. The parietal bone is paired, and the temporal bone are paired. Frontal or occipital are single. Now these bones are joined together by immobile joints, and the joints is called as sutures. Okay. Now what are the sutures? Now see this suture. This is coronal suture. The coronal suture is in the coronal plane, and this coronal suture is in between frontal. Yeah, you can say both way. Two parietal or frontal or two parietal bone. The same thing. Now the another suture is in the sagittal plane. This suture is called as sagittal suture, and this suture is called as lambdoid suture. Because of its shape, it is called as lambdoid suture. This is lambdoid suture, and this suture is called as squamous suture. Now the sagittal suture is between two parietal bone. The lambdoid suture is between two parietal
and
occipital bone. A squamous suture is between parietal or temporal bone. Now the point where the suture meet is called as this point where the coronal suture, look at this point. This point where coronal suture or sagittal suture are meeting, this is called as bregma. And the point, this point where sagittal suture or lambdoid suture is meeting is called as lambda. Okay. Now this is adult skull. Okay, this is adult skull. In newborn, what happened that this area is membranous, and this area is membranous. Now this bone, the skull bones develop from the membrane. And initially the bone is membrane, and from there membrane the adult bones develop. So in newborns, this area and this area are membranes. So this area is called as, these are called as fontanelles. This is called as anterior fontanelles, and this is called as posterior fontanelles. So anterior fontanelle is between frontal or two parietal bones, and posterior fontanelle is here. This is between two parietal or occipital bone. Now, okay, now come to the orbit. See this. This is orbit. Okay, this is orbit, and it is consist of, this is roof, floor, medial wall or lateral wall. Now which bones is forming the roof? Frontal bone. Which bone is forming the floor? Maxilla. Which bone is forming the lateral wall? Zygomatic wall, part of frontal bone. And which bone is forming the medial wall? Nasal bones, and there is one bone that is called as lacrimal. Okay, lacrimal bone is for the lacrimal gland. Okay, so you should know what are the bones which form the roof, the floor, the medial wall, or lateral wall. Now, what is this bone is? Nasal bone. Now this nasal bone, what is this called as? This is called as bridge of the nose, and the bridge of the nose is formed by the nasal bones. Okay. Then, what is this bone is? Maxilla. The maxilla forms the upper jaw. And this is zygomatic. This forms the molar prominence. This prominence is because of the zygomatic bone. Now, the maxilla forms the upper jaw. What forms the lower jaw? Mandible. So here it is. This is mandible. Now, what are the parts of mandible? One is called as body. And then is the ramus. Okay, this is ramus, and this is the body. So the mandible have one body, what two? Ramus. Now ramus has two surfaces, lateral surface or medial surface. Now look at these two process. The anterior one is called as coronoid process, and posterior one is called as condyloid process. Coronoid process is anterior, while condyloid process is posterior, and this is notch. This notch is called as mandibular notch. Okay. Now, see the medial surface here. You can see there is a foramen. What is this foramen? Is mandibular foramen, and this foramen is for inferior alveolar nerve. Alveolar yani which supplies the alveolus. So there are two alveolus, one on the lower jaw and one on the upper jaw. So the nerve which supplies the lower alveolus is called as inferior alveolus. Okay. So this nerve is inferior alveolar nerve which passes through the mandibular foramen, and just close to the mandibular foramen there is a bony projection, and that bony projection is called as lingula. Okay. Now see this, what muscle is attached to the coronoid process? What muscle is attached to the coronoid process? Temporalis. Okay. What muscle is attached to the lateral surface of ramus of mandible? This is the lateral surface of the ramus of mandible. So which muscle is attached here? Masseter. Okay. So remember these important things. Now next, moving on to, see here. Now coming to the temporal bone. Now temporal bone has three very important features. One is this bony projection. This is called as this bony projection is called as mastoid process. This process is called as stellate process. Okay. This process is called as stellate process, and this meatus is bony external auditory meatus. Okay. This is bony external auditory meatus. So these three features are a part of the temporal